Back in early December, Mayor Rilling invited Ron Schofield and myself to meet with him. And at that meeting, we discussed two topics. The East Avenue undergrounding and a district-owned property on East Avenue. And at that meeting, I thought it would be appropriate for the mayor to come and do a presentation before the commission, so that the commission can understand what the city is, I'll use the phrase proposing or requesting. Since it is a commission's decision on a lot of the topics, that it's best to have the city present it to you. So, without further ado.
Thank you.
Can I chime in? This is one more introductory piece before you get
Sure.
started, Mayor. We'd like you to consider this as opening the door to a discussion about these two topics. The city is not making a formal proposal.
Can you announce your name?
Sorry.
And your
For the
position
record.
with the White House?
I may not
Maybe
be able to
someday.
recognize the voices on the tape.
Sure. Leisha came from the
Thank
mayor's
you.
office.
Spell your first name.
That I have.
Okay, it's a difficult spelling.
She's been in to meet with us before.
So I just wanted to say that we're not asking the commission to take any formal action tonight. We just wanted to open the door to these two topics. We've brought several city staff persons with us who are here who can answer more detailed questions about the two ideas that we have that we'd like to work cooperatively with the third taxing district on. So,
Yeah,
Mr.
thank
Mayor.
you. Yes, we have Lisa Burns here, Catherine Hebert, and Steve Kloppin. We wanted to talk about the East Avenue corridor and what we would like to see happen there, but we also understand that there are some challenges to underground utilities that Kevin and Ron explained to us earlier about the different maintenance and requirements. But we, as Alicia said, we just want to have that discussion so you can get an idea of what we're looking to have happen. Mainly there are two things that we're talking about tonight. One of them is the undergrounding of the utilities along the East Avenue corridor. And we have some renderings that Lisa will present so that you can see the difference with the above ground utilities and the underground utilities. We think that with the underground utilities, it will make a very beautiful gateway into the East Norwalk area. There are some wonderful things happening over there, and we believe that having them underground, and the experts will have to make a better determination, but it would seem to me that underground utilities would require perhaps less maintenance. We know if there is an outage or if there is a problem, then it may be more challenging because you have to have special crews trained and so forth. But having said that, we were just having a meeting the other day up on Glover Avenue, and they did underground utilities up there for the new curb, the building that's going to be there. And it really aesthetically pleasing compared to some of the ugly wires and poles and everything required when you have above ground utilities. The other thing, because the bridge or the roadway under the bridge, the East Avenue Bridge, will be lowered, the driveway going into the train station, the East Norwalk train station, will be a challenge. So we're hopefully going to start the discussion on aligning with Fort Point Street, the driveway going into the East Norwalk train station. Of course, you know there's a house there right now, so how that will happen will also be up for discussion. But I wanted to ask Lisa to come up and show the renderings and explain some of the things that are happening along East Avenue, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback from you and your term. So Lisa.
Great.
And Catherine, if you
Good evening. I am Lisa Burns. I'm the principal engineer for the city of Norwalk. And I'm going to ask Steve if you can chime in on the economic benefits of underground utilities. And that's data I don't have in my presentation. So as far as... Okay, great. Steve and I didn't have a chance to talk before. It's a pretty exciting time for East Norwalk right now. There's especially East Avenue. So you may turn a little bit more.
Leave it for the public.
Okay. So what I had here is I just printed this today before I left the office. This is East Avenue from exit 16, the corridor down to Van Zant, Route 136. And there's a whole bunch of projects proposed along this corridor. And each of these projects has an opportunity where we can do street improvements from curb to curb and sidewalk, trying to implement like a complete street solution, improving the pedestrian mobility, improving access to the train station, and really trying to unify this corridor. There's been a lot of investment in other parts of the city, South Norwalk, West Avenue, where a holistic approach has been taken to trying to unify a neighborhood together, and its look, the aesthetics of it all. We just completed a really successful project with undergrounding utilities, actually adjacent to Spinnaker project for the Washington Village project. All the utilities were undergrounded for that neighborhood in South Norwalk. And pretty much, with the exception of the third taxing district area, because as you all know probably better than I do, you have the Eversource service area and also South Norwalk Electric. This is the only part of town that has not explored the underground utility option yet. So it's something that we've been doing as a city for a number of years, and it's really been well received by the residents, neighborhoods, the public, and also by people who want to make an investment in the city. So I'll just start from the north and work south. There's a project on the books. It's 102-331. It is the exit 16. It's the East Avenue Bridge over I-95, as well as the interchange with I-95. Right now, there should be a public info hopefully soon. The DOT presented its latest concept to the city in spring of last year. I had thought that they were going to do a public info sometime summer, fall. That hasn't happened yet, but that should be happening soon. What they're proposing to do with this interchange is a diverging diamond interchange. So it would be the first in Connecticut, one of the first in like the Northeast. But it's basically, it eliminates a lot of the way it's laid out. I don't know, it's like a crisscross, and it eliminates all the left-hand turn conflicts that people have, the dangerous lefts people are making to try to get onto I-95. And that you guys will have an opportunity to come out and do a public info at its concept phase. We asked for some visual simulations, like driving through the intersection when they get to that point. So that takes us basically from Hendricks Avenue down to St. John Street. The city has applied for a signal replacement at Myrtle Avenue through a LATSIP grant application. And that looks very promising that the city will receive the funding to replace the traffic signal and do some other ADA improvements at Myrtle Street. And we should hear back on that grant February, so next month. Then that takes us from Myrtle Street South to the, basically there's two chunks. It's Myrtle Street to Fort Point, and then Winfield down to Van Sant and some of Gregory Boulevard. That's project 102-297. That's the East Avenue Road Reconstruction project that's been around since the late 1990s, and it's looking like it's finally going to go forward in conjunction with the Walk Bridge project. And that's a city project. This part is city designed, and the construction funding is provided through basically a grant that the city's receiving and controlling. So, and then we have the Walk Bridge piece in the middle here, where the bridge is getting replaced over East Avenue for the Walk Bridge, in conjunction with the Walk Bridge project. And then there's also, I'll show you some other improvements in this area, but this is pretty much nailed down from Winfield to Fort Point, more or less. And as Mike knows, the utilities, the third taxing district utilities are going underground already in this area. That's been at least a 30 to 60% design at this point, going to 90% design. So that's going underground already. There's a policy with the state DOT that you cannot hang any utilities on bridges that are replaced. So that's done. And then I believe you all have some underground utilities in this vicinity that come out of, where am I? Out of your substation. But that's not more related to service, from my understanding, that's more related to your transmission, is that
Distribution.
distribution. So, so that's kind of, if, you know, trying to plan these projects all out together and trying to come up with a, you know, a nice experience for someone coming from I-95, this gateway here, and down into East Norwalk, and then they also have, you know, the opportunity for the project here, which somewhat ties in with 230 East Avenue, the Spinnaker development, and some other things happening along with the TOD. I'm not sure exactly the boundaries of the.
That's all within the boundary.
All within the TOD. Okay, so. Does anyone have any questions about any of the projects overall? Yeah, okay. You good? Okay. So, when the mayor and Kevin and staff met in December, I was asked to have some renderings prepared for the undergrounding of the utilities and for a proposal to realign the driveway of the East Norwalk Railroad Station in alignment with 4 Point Street. That was kind of a pretty tall task to get done in a pretty short time frame over the holidays. So I received the renderings on Saturday, and the guy doing them was out in Colorado, so we didn't have a lot of time to refine. But so this is what we ended up with. So this is just kind of giving you a general idea of just all the activity, aerial activity, and I would have liked to have come back a little bit further up East Avenue to kind of see how it looks in front of the church and all that, but just time constraints we were at. So I'm sure you all are very familiar with this area. This is 4 Point Street. This is a temporary parking lot right now. The existing bridge, the house that you all own that goes back to your property, and then the driveway up into the East Norwalk train station. And it just gives you an idea of kind of what's happening in the aerial, that a lot of this will be eliminated in this part, but what we really would like to do is continue that from 4 Point Street, at least to Myrtle for this project, which is our project limits, and then from on the south side, from Winfield just to Van Zant for that block, just on the side by like the station house, not on the Gregory Avenue side. So this is what, and just for everyone, the road cross section and how it's laid out is very preliminary. That has not been decided yet as far as where the bike lanes and how the sidewalks are going to be, but we picked something just to put on a plan for illustration purposes. There is a design advisory committee that should be reactivated again for the East Norwalk, kind of the design of the roadway. What's that experience like? Is it the same as Washington Street or West Avenue? Do you have the same brick pavers, and do you have the same, or do you have crushed oyster shells in your tree belt, or something different? And I think some of the feedback we had from the neighborhood is East Norwalk is different than West Avenue, more commercial corridor, or maybe it's more of a village kind of aesthetic we're looking for. So we do have a landscape architect on board to work with the community and with different stakeholders to kind of come up with that aesthetic. One thing we did ask for when the existing bridge is demolished, is if they can salvage some of the brownstone off that bridge, and they could be used as a facing, perhaps, as one of the elements on some of the on some of the different wall structures. So just to give you an idea, what's happening here is the new bridge is quite a bit wider underneath. And so we don't have all of that. I think people in Dept, you probably know from that swallowing effect down East Avenue is eliminated. You're not going from lane to lane.
I'm really good at it.
Right. I wasn't so good at it tonight because I had this board in my car and I couldn't see out the rear view mirror, but So I was having a little trouble, but, and, you know, and it, obviously it improves the pedestrian experience, their sidewalks, but, and a better sight line coming through. The train station platform on both sides now is gonna extend over the roadway. So when you get to East Norwalk now, it'll say, hey, you have to move up those 4 cars or whatever, right? And you can't get off. So now you're gonna be able to discharge from wherever you are on the train and get off onto the platform. Because the road lowers, there's going to have to be a retaining wall around the additional parking area here, and then there's a 3-level elevator on each side. So it'll stop at the platform, it'll stop at the parking lot, and it'll stop at street level. Okay. Then there's this strange little building that popped up one day on our DOT plan that when we got to the, did you see that on the 60% plan? It's called a node building. We had never heard about it before. Actually took a little bit of parking out of this lot. This node building is for their security, systems
Cameras,
up
they'll have
along,
cameras,
up
yeah.
and down the Metro North tracks.
Is that behind, is the building behind East Avenue Pizza?
No, it's
Or is it to
actually,
the- in the parking lot? That's,
it's kind of up on like, I can probably show you on the plan view. So,
Actually, if you showed it on the actual photo, it'd be more helpful, because the perspective on this is wildly off. If you could flip back and point to where it would be on the existing empty lot.
probably up in this, like on this little hill thing over here.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
so that's further back from the pizza.
It'll still be, like if you're facing the pizza restaurant, it'll be to the left of it, but further back. Yeah. And that's on a 60% plan, so it's subject to change, right? Okay, so right now, let's see, let's go to and this is the plan view. This is showing, not our total project limit, because our project limit's more up here, but there'll be specialty sidewalks or crosswalks, there'll be some kind of treatment within the snow shelf. The road gets widened, the sidewalks get improved, and these are the elevator structures, these are the extended platforms, and this is some configuration of where the Spinnaker coffee shop, I don't know what you wanna
Yeah.
call it, is going to be some building.
Yeah.
That's kind of still in play, as far as what that's gonna finally look like. And then this shows an opportunity if the city were maybe to be able to take an easement of some sort of public passage from, if the house that you have is going to truly be knocked down, which is something we were made aware of, we thought potentially we could do the improvements to help you get back into your, well, help me, Mike, your substation. And then we would be able to align now Fort Point Street with the entrance to the into the railroad station. Right now it's offset, so the proposed traffic light there's a traffic light proposed in any scenario, even if the driveway's not realigned, and it would just function much better it would be much safer for the pedestrians. Yes.
You're gonna put another traffic light on East Avenue.
There is at Fort Point.
So, why don't you come about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning and try and get out of East Norwalk with the way the traffic lights are lined up now. You can't get in. You're gonna sit there I'll put it like, it took me longer to get from East Gregory Boulevard to the thruway at 8:45 this morning than it was to get to where Costco is.
I don't disagree with you.
That's how long it took
Yes.
because of your lights. So you're adding more lights, which means there's such a coordination problem, it's ridiculous there.
Well, the coordination of the traffic lights is all part of the plan.
Right.
Yes.
Right
I
now,
mean, they aren't coordinated now, why,
We
Well,
know that. That's part of the plan.
just going back though,
Not the chair, I can't recognize you.
Pete, just going back, this light at Myrtle is not in the coordinated system right now. That's why we're asking,
Right.
this is a hole in the donut here. There are ongoing problems with trying to make the left or the right out of Fort Point, that I'm sure you know, like, once one car gets here, no one can get by at all, and it just backs the traffic up. So, there's been a lot of traffic study here. Even if the city was not gonna do this project, the Walk Bridge has to put this traffic signal here anyway, because they have to control traffic during the Walk Bridge construction. So it's even, like I said, even if we weren't gonna do this, this light was gonna be put up. And there's other lights proposed that'll be put up to accommodate all of the, traffic management plan for the Walk Bridge.
You guys have never heard of a temporary traffic control signal?
Yes, that's
Okay.
what they have proposed here right now, is a temporary traffic control signal, but we're saying if we're gonna do it, which it's warranted here, it's warranted to have a traffic light, and it's gonna be run off the same controller as a Pitch Street. So it's one controller, that will be a coordinated light, and if we can get Myrtle done at the same time, they'll all be coordinated.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
The new configuration, if you take over one of our properties, does that, add any more parking to the northbound, or that would be southbound side?
Right, so this side, right now, with the new driveway, so if, this kind of was a newer concept. So everything designed right now, if you go to our 60% plans, shows the driveway back here. Very steep grade. It doesn't meet any kind of engineering criteria at all. It's very steep, not pedestrian friendly, doesn't, you know.
Tell
it's-
me about it, I've fallen on my keister more than once in the
And
winter
it gets worse with the road work.
with the road
It will
blowing.
become even steeper.
And that's true on both sides.
But on this side, you're entering, this grade, we still need to work out a little bit. But coming in and out here, just driving in and out or walking in and out is fine, and it's gonna be aided by the elevator. You're not gonna have to, you won't have to walk all the way around. So, under this scenario, right now, the city loses 9 parking spaces. Which were supposed to be accommodated other places, but we have, I think, 27 spots in there now.
Yeah.
And here
With the
temporarily,
yeah.
but then when the elevator came and the node building came,
You
I
know,
don't know,
lost
we got like, I don't know, 8, 16 spaces now. So we lost with some of this configuration. It may be made up under here, but the city's position has always been, we need more parking, or we cannot lose any parking. So that's been our position with the DOT since the very beginning of the project, and Catherine's been corresponding with them on that.
when you're lowering the grade,
Through the chair.
Okay, just let us continue, I mean, I know this is my position I take it on, but let's follow the regs and continue to move on and wait our turns when we're asked to move on. All right, go ahead.
you're lowering the grades. The pitch is still gonna be the same coming from that drive, it's gonna be worse from that driveway with the pitch when you're lowering the grade of the whole road.
The road
Are you
comes,
gonna lower all the parking lot?
no, the road comes back up to grade around here. Okay, so you're back at the existing grade here. So,
I was under the understanding it was more so the grade was gonna start at Penny's.
no. You're done here. See, back here on the retaining wall is when you're done.
So you're saying the grade's gonna start at Fort Point,
Yep,
and you're gonna come down 3 feet, or 4 feet?
3 feet.
3 feet you're gonna come down?
yeah, that's here. And Pete, probably your next question is, how's the drainage work?
No, not the
But-
drainage, I'm looking at a
but, yeah.
40-foot box truck coming under there. When you're only 40, 50 feet away, when that truck's coming down, you're coming at an angle now.
I'll let the bridge designers figure out if it works or not, but it works, so. So, I mean, this is so conceptual, we just, like, said, hey, can you put a driveway on just to show, because, and so we haven't worked out the grading or anything on this driveway, or exactly how it would look, or if it would look anything like this at all, but we just said for purposes of coming here tonight to show you something.
And Lisa, I mean, my understanding is that since we haven't gone into full design for this yet, because we need to know whether the third taxing district will entertain the idea of us working with you on that piece of property, I think that there may be a possibility to obtain some extra parking, to answer your question, Pam, on that side. But we haven't gone through that level of design yet.
Right.
Can I ask Mike, who knows the property better than anybody else, to just show where you need the easement to access the substation? Because the fence isn't even on there. The garage apparently is gone, so I've lost all perspective. Do you think you could point to where our easement
I
is
was
required?
proposing that you keep the property, by the way, and not, and we take the easement, but, yeah.
Mike, if I explained where our transmission underground facilities are running through there,
Yeah, we're.
which
Right.
is probably the bigger
That's
major
bigger.
concern.
So a couple of terms, right? Transmission is, for us, is 115, which travels on the High Line.
Yep.
We then step it down to sub-transmission, which is our 27,000, and then we get into distribution, which is our 5 kV. So the 115 comes off the High Lines here, and then there's a substation here, Fitch Street. That's what steps it down to the 27 and feeds our 3 other large substations. The one here is East Avenue. It gets its feed from Fitch. That's underground through the property, and then it feeds a set of transformers in Fitch that then go out into the system to feed our distribution. Those distribution feeders come from this building. They come out the main part of the driveway here. They go underneath the bridge, and then they go across the street. Now, across the street, we have not only distribution, but we have our 27,000 sub-transmission that feeds the substation over on Rowan Street. So there's 2 feeders that come out, well, more than 2 feeders, but 2 separate duct banks. One of them, that's 4 or 5 kV that comes out and goes underneath East Avenue Bridge. A portion of it continues up to 4 Point and rises up in front of East Avenue Pizza area. The sub-transmission leaves here, crosses 4 Point, and then goes down over to Rowan Street with a dedicated circuit to
The
the wastewater treatment plant. So,
Thank you, Mike. Through the chair. Now, if I may, anything that, if anything is ever decided, we'd have to seriously take into consideration easements or access for those facilities.
Right.
That's always a major concern, so.
I think it'd be recognized. My understanding too is, from the utilities coordination meetings that took place in connection with the lowering of the roadway on East Avenue, is that you're required to have 3 feet of fill or whatever above those lines as well, as above any utility, whether it's a sewer or whatever. So with the grade there, is that even gonna be possible? To have 3 full feet over our sub-transmission lines that we're talking about?
You all have been coordinating that work yourself from here to here. So I'm assuming you got the coverage you need.
it's,
I'm talking about the grade on that new driveway.
Well, we'd be coming up on the driveway, for sure. I mean, we wouldn't be,
I'm asking Mike. He.
okay, I didn't.
Yeah, because he knows what we have there.
yeah,
physically.
I mean, the way it was explained to me again is that the project limits for the taking down of the roadway is gonna be from Winfield to 4 Point Street. There's been some test pit information coming along here that kinda confirms some of our locations. Like I said, it's only in the 60% design phase on what's coming through over here when they put in the new duct bank. So we're still kind of in the exploratory phase, if you will, on exactly where some of our infrastructure crosses the 4 Point Street.
But the slope of the driveway now is full 3 feet over the stuff that's underneath, and if that gets graded more, is that still gonna be possible? If you know, and if you don't,
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know exactly. I know some of it's deeper than the other stuff, and one of the reasons they couldn't find some of our infrastructure is because they went down 40 inches, and we were actually like 68 inches down.
That's good to know.
Conversely, on the opposite side of that, I think we were down like 24 inches. But it was along the edge of the driveway and not a lot of traffic, so.
And that's not a DOT requirement, that's your requirement, how much cover you want to have over your
Yeah,
utilities.
National Electric Safety Code,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
so, so for us, like for our sanitary sewer, we like to have 3 feet of cover, but there's alternatives if you can't get that amount of cover, we change the pipe material, so. We have the same on our infrastructure for our storm sewer and sanitary sewer. And just the last one I wanted to show was, I'm not sure, but a lot of this catenary, a lot of the catenary lines will be cleaned up through the project, but I just want to say that even though the utilities along the East Avenue corridor on each side, the east and the west, that the goal is to have those gone, but it still would be some kind of wire associated with the railroad station, so just wanted to point that out. The amount of lines should be reduced as through their communication and service and their upgrades when they do the bridge project and they replace those catenaries. That was just some of our thoughts.
Before you conclude, could you explain about funding? For the
Okay,
underground?
funding, right. So, we can go back to funding here. There's different funding for each piece. So, for this corridor, we've already had preliminary discussions with the DOT about this being a participating, if this were to be underground, we were able to move off the poles in this area, that it would be a participating cost, because this is most likely going to be adopted as a TOD criteria for this corridor, that the preference would be undergrounding, as it has been for other areas where primarily they've been redevelopment areas. So this would be state funded in here. This is a grant fund, the LOTSIP grant here that we applied for through WestCog. We are paying for the design here for the for this piece and this piece. So if we were going to pursue with the third taxing district on the design of the underground, that'd be something the city would pay for, the design. If you use Joe Christino or whoever you would use, we would work with them. And then the construction, that'd be 100% the city's cost on this side for undergrounding the utilities. The city has already funded $1 million towards undergrounding for this piece and this piece, and it's requested in its capital budget this year more funding to further support the construction of this project in these locations. And then this piece here is it's 100% reimbursable to the third taxing district by the TOT for the utility work here.
Interrupt you for a second. Can I be very, very clear? You've just stated that you've already committed city funds to underground in the district with the last request, and you're going back for more now?
It can be used for undergrounding utilities, or it can be used for any kind of non-participating cost the state wouldn't pick up, so any kind of amenity.
Right, that's not
It
what I
says
heard you
East
say.
Avenue Road reconstruction is what's been funded. But
Okay,
the
so
intent, the dollar amount that we've been seeking is part and parcel with the cost of the undergrounding utilities, because that's the most expensive component of the work.
I'm sorry to break your flow. I just wanted
No,
to
no
clarify what I heard, because you said 100 million for undergrounding.
No, $1 million.
100 million, I'm sorry, for undergrounding, but you used 100 million for the East Avenue.
She said
not-
one
That's
million.
what I
One
think, correct,
million.
1 million, not 100 million.
Yeah.
No, I heard
Johnny
100
Mac.
million.
No.
Well, I'll correct myself, I meant the
Right.
million if I
You
said
didn't
it.
say
Johnny
100, you said, you
Mac.
said one. Okay, 1 second. Ken?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, Pete?
Does that include feeding every single customer?
We have some
Because then it has
preliminary.
to go underground, which means your
Not
meters are
really.
changing.
We
Not
looked
really.
preliminarily at that, and a lot of the there's not actually that many customers affected. Especially going from, Fort Point up to Myrtle, because a lot of them can be fed from the side streets still, which are not underground. So, that has to be something that would have to,
You got both sides of the street, or the poles are on one side. You're feeding both sides, so now you've gotta go underground across the road to that house.
well, let me give you an example. Right now, I think you have, there's a pole here over the tailoring shop.
Yeah,
You have an aerial trespass to feed the car wash over that building. It's kind of laying on top of the roof of that. So that would be cleaned up, right?
How would you
And
clean
probably
that up?
Star, because the Star car wash here that has the line going over the Continental would be fed off of Fort Point. So there's some things that would be also improved for our taxing district that you probably have some aerial trespasses on this corridor that would be eliminated.
Pam?
Who is going to be paying for all the changes in the aerial going down the side streets? Who is going to be, is the city going to pick up all that cost for the changes?
those are
On-
drop-offs.
So
So if you're moving
So
your
if we're gonna feed the
lines,
church, say from Ariel from Fitch,
yeah,
instead of Ariel from East, the city would pay for that.
so anything that's moved off of East Avenue poles and down the side streets, the city picks that up
Yes.
because that's
Mhm.
part of
And
the
the
project.
service, right.
And the service, and that's
Mhm.
part of the project,
Right.
okay.
Okay.
You got taps that come off of East Avenue, that go down Myrtle, go down St. John's, go down Raymond Terrace. Poles are on this side. You got a pole on this side. What are you gonna do to feed that street? You're gonna have to go underground and then to a riser?
Mm-hmm.
Question. I see you have 1, 2, 3, 5 circles, but I do see a gap, north of Myrtle and south, I guess it's Osborne.
St. John.
What is that, St. John, sorry. Is that gonna be part of the undergrounding, or is that gonna remain above?
Yeah, most likely what we'll
Right
do
there,
on this project, when this project happens, we'll work with the state to extend it to wherever we leave off the Myrtle, and we'll pick it
Okay.
up as non-participating at that point.
Okay,
So we wouldn't just,
Yeah.
that
the
little,
goal is to
Down.
get it all
Mhm.
done, all the
okay, so
way.
that little piece,
Yeah. All I'm saying is this is kind of what we have going as projects now. This would be subject to more of a, this would be all participating, where this piece, which is very, minor. Because really, the state, we've been, in full disclosure, we wanted the state to deal with Mike's Deli. Because of all the parking there, it would be easier for them to take on the St. John intersection, and that's what they agreed to do that. Our project limit used to go up to here, but it gets very difficult with property acquisition, and they're in a better position to try to work all that stuff out, so.
I looked at the DDI diagram, it looks like an awful lot of property would have to be taken in order to make space for that, but that's not
Yeah.
this
Right,
conversation.
right.
Anyone else?
Could we have Steve talk a little bit about what the city's interest, just in terms of economic development?
Okay, well, back up, the city did get a grant from the state of Connecticut in 2017 to do a TOD study of the area. And we actually just signed the contract with the consultant Friday after a very long wait. So that study's gonna kick off very shortly. So the area of the TOD study stops at 95 on the on the southern part of 95, and then it's really a half-mile radius around the two stations. That's really the limits of what they'll fund. So we're gonna be looking at land use within that area. One of the things we'll start out with is what's appropriate in terms of the type of development, scale of development, what people wanna see. what people like in the area now, the neighborhoods and certain streets that are right now, people think are what they'd like to see in East Avenue. And part of this is we'll work with, and there's a member of Lisa's team already on the oversight committee, in addition to Dept Goldstein and Diane Cece are also participating. We're going to look at that design of that corridor, because when you go down through there, to me, when you get off 95 and come down, there's a lot of room for improvement. And when you get off into a lot of the side streets, that's when you see some really great neighborhoods. So we really want to try to make that area pop, and and not overwhelm the area. We understand that East Norwalk is not South Norwalk. We understand that the scale of development in South Norwalk probably is not appropriate on any kind of wide basis through there. Doesn't mean there won't be more density and more development, but it does mean that it's going to be a little different. So we're going to develop those standards, develop the kind of help develop the character of the neighborhood. Without doing a little more homework, I couldn't tell you anything on the economic benefits from undergrounding utilities versus leaving them overhead. Obviously, it's the more attractive the area is for pedestrians, motorists, and bicyclists, it's going to just lead to increased property values. I think that's pretty clear. What the percent increases would be really hard for me to speculate.
Question for Steve. Steve, what was it, last year or the year before? East Norwalk, I participated in the East Norwalk Neighborhood Association, where they had Deb and Diane, you had us all at Marvin picking out pavers, picking out the curtains for East Avenue.
Yeah, there was a meeting at City Hall. They met with some, but there was a there was a meeting that really before we even got the
meeting and about the bridge. I went and you asked everybody, what would you like to see? What type of pavers would you like to see? You had okay, I'm not crazy, am I?
Maybe another meeting, but anyway, your point.
The point is you had everybody there and you gathered all this information of what type of sidewalks would you like and what would you like to see on East Avenue, and whatever happened to that information, did it go over to City Hall?
Yeah, there was actually a meeting at City Hall about sidewalks, and this was before the TOD study was even.
I'm waiting to be recognized here because when ENNA held the neighborhood forum, it was about a lot of things. Do you want a street light or not? A traffic light or not a traffic light? I remember there were a hell of a lot of dots against like bike lanes and stuff like that. There may have been one tiny thing where a couple of pavers were shown, but the only conversation revolving around what the sidewalk and all of that stuff was going to look like was the Design Advisory Committee, which you are the TTD's appointed member to. So I don't know if the two kind of got conflated.
Well, all the information
I'll
that you
clarify
gathered.
because now I know the meeting that you're talking about.
What happened to that information? Did it ever go to City Hall?
Well, the feedback was to go back to City Hall. Yes, it did. And the fact that we were presenting back to them what we presented to the public in terms of what their initial drawings were. And we really focused on the number of lanes, the lane width, and when we talked about sidewalks, we were talking about the design that would allow for a greater width of the sidewalk and how the snow shelf would be. And then all of that was in anticipation of the TOD grant and POCD and the community visioning. So all of that has gone back in various components of the city. And then, of course, the other component of that is what people want to see along East Avenue. That was a meeting where we got into what type of businesses, what type of services, the amenities that would be there. So there was a bunch of it.
So that information, so the information with, that everybody showed up and put their little dots on the wall, that has gone to the city?
Yes.
But in different configurations, yeah.
And
it will be taken into account when we go to do the work with the city on the TOD.
Okay. No, I'll just be quick. To Diane's point, and also I guess Lisa and I will definitely circle back on the, because there was a meeting regarding the sidewalk treatments that did happen at City Hall a while over a year ago. So we'll make sure that's all going to get, I think, incorporated into the TOD plan, and they'll end up being design guidelines, so it'll be clear what people really want, and it'll be laid out in the plan.
Okay. I'm just gonna, just throw this out there so that it's been heard in the context of this conversation about economic development and the fact that aerial wires somehow depress economic development or the, appearance of the neighborhood. East Norwalk is basically an overhead system, and, I think I can speak for the ratepayers here. We're very, very proud of the area, aerial wires notwithstanding. But when we're talking about economic development and opportunity, we also have to take into account the fact that this ratepayer-owned utility has successfully kept their rates substantially lower than the investor-owned utilities that are right next door. And that has not been factored into the possible economic development conversations with attracting businesses to this part of the city. Competitive electric rates are also an economic development driver. And so to the extent that these things over the long haul may, and we're gonna have to explore this, I think, in our strategic planning conversations, which are getting back underway this year, balancing the offset of the long-term maintenance of these undergrounds for the, I'm gonna say, and I know it's a provocative word, hypothetical, additional value of aesthetics of moving grounds underground versus permanently raising the electric rates for everybody is something we probably have to take into consideration. Everybody talks about moving them underground because it makes the area more valuable or more attractive, but we have no trouble attracting people to come here. And part of that is because the electricity is inexpensive and very, very reliable, and that is one of the major components that we promise and continue to promise to deliver to our ratepayers. Just so it's been said.
I was 20 years with Northeast Utilities in the test department. Underground is great for the first 30 years. A nick in a aluminum cable, service cable, a nick in it, 36 months you will have a fault. To fix that fault, you have to find out where it is. So if we're the top rated area for outages of the least outages, you know, on the eastern coast mostly. Putting this, you're changing grab 2 wires, put a connector in it, you're done, compared to 10 hours. The shortest time I've ever seen anyone do, because I was in the test department. My job was to find where the fault was. Then they would repair it. So you're looking at double to triple the time, and then you're not using linemen. You're using cable splicers. They have to know what type of material they're using. The material you've got to carry on the truck and have at all times. I mean, not counting pad mount transformers, unless you're going to do submersibles. I mean, there's so many things involved in going underground. It sounds great, and I agree, it looks beautiful. But in 30 years, when everything starts going, and you got to replace it, you aren't replacing a piece of wire and sticking it like this. You're taking, let's say, from here to Gregory Boulevard. That's what you're pulling out to replace, because it's in conduit. You can't dig the middle of the road up to fix it. And usually when you're thumping the cable, usually 90% of the time it's in the middle of the pipe, because sand, grit from the manholes go down, and wires have a 60 cycle hum. They're moving 60 cycles at a time. People don't know it, but it does. Wires move. And what happens eventually, the sand will get through it. That's why I'm saying 30 years, you're going to start having problems. This is where we're looking at cost after. It'd be beautiful to have it if you know you're not going to have any problems with it.
Dave, before Dave, I think Diane had, did you have any?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question. I'd like either the commissioners or maybe staff, if you can tell us, Because the property that we're talking about, the train station, is owned by the district, which is the ratepayers here, can you tell us what the process would be if you were to consider giving up that property? Does it go to a vote to the ratepayers? Is it something that would be considered, is this a sale, is this a trade-off? Is it something otherwise we'd be putting out to bid? And what other alternatives for the property that we own have been considered or could be considered?
You want me to take a whack at this since I've been here the
Yeah.
longest? All right.
I'd have to pull out the charter.
The process is TBD. I heard Lisa say today that they are not interested in acquiring the property, that we would probably retain ownership. I will say that our previous general manager had showed concerns about the condition of the house. We had been undertaking to have that discussion as part of strategic planning with, I'm now the only remaining person in the room from when that conversation first started. Our general manager has turned over and the rest of the commission's turned over around me. So I would argue that with the strategic planning process starting on January 28th of this very month, and a ratepayer meeting ahead of us, that we need to first wrap our arms around all of the things that we want to discuss and bring before the ratepayers. My preference is for big things to go, like a major and substantial change to the business, like a substantial undergrounding would be something that the ratepayers would be involved in. This presentation is the first we're hearing of it, so I don't think we have no concerted approach to dealing with this, because before today we weren't even all impaneled to talk together. It'll have to go on an agenda and we'll have to start the process and figure out what's the best way forward. I think I can speak for all of us by saying that we hear what you're saying about the property and that you want to make sure that the process is visible to the public.
And I just have, if I can, just a question for Lisa, because it's hard to see the perspective here on what you're showing, but the renditions that you have here, how many lanes are there underneath the railroad bridge?
4.
There are 4.
4 and a bike lane.
Okay.
That, again, I said
It
that's just
almost-
for
I mean,
presentation
the angle I'm at,
purposes
it looks
only.
like 2, and I was trying to discern like.
No.
How
It's
they
a
came back
7-foot
to-
sidewalk on the east, on the
Thank you.
west side, and 5
And yet
feet
this
on the
stupid thing is still here.
Well, you gotta give me a little break about getting this on Saturday, that I didn't have much chance to go back and,
Lisa,
you know, refine some of the guy out in Colorado I was talking to on the
At
phone.
least once a week in the winter, I used to have to call public customer
Yeah,
service
I
and
know.
ask them to put that thing back, because trucks would not
Lisa,
get
you
out.
didn't bring any designs of the I-95 overpass?
I don't have them yet.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but George Pete.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about the backup, that will go a long way to reduce the backup at I-95, where people are coming off the road and they're blocking the box, and people are coming this way, left
They love
turn,
blocking
right
that
turn.
box.
Yeah,
Right.
so that, along with the coordinated lights in the 4 lanes of traffic on East Avenue, will go a long way to relieve all that traffic backup that you experience. I experience it myself. When I come out in the morning, rather than go down East Avenue, I'll go down Winfield and Strawberry Hill Avenue and go the back roads.
That's the same way I go.
Yeah.
And that's the way Waze tells you to go.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot more traffic on like Eversley.
And the other thing, this is what we wanted to make the presentation. We recognize the fact that this is the first time you're seeing it, and we just wanted to start the discussion. And the underground utilities, I know they do it other places, and it seems to be the trend now to, when they're building new infrastructure, to go underground. And so I'm hoping that at least we can have that discussion and see if we can't make that happen.
Okay, let me, before we go.
One other question.
Just
Okay.
one thing.
All right, we all have one thing.
I'm a ratepayer.
I'm good.
Okay,
He just answered my question.
okay, yes, Pete.
I represent the ratepayers. Something like this, after all the information is in, I think it should be, the ratepayers should vote on something like this. I think it's, not 3 commissioners say it's okay. I think all of East Norwalk should have its chance to vote a yea or nay on this.
Deb?
If I could, yeah, I just note that out of all the delegation that came in, that Catherine Hebert is Parking Authority Executive Director, I'm not sure what your title is. And if she was brought in, it to address any particular item in connection with the city's proposal. Is there a parking component here that you were gonna speak to?
There will be eventually, but again, this is in a conceptual phase right now, so that's something that needs to be discussed. Like Lisa said, our position is not to lose any parking spaces and to hopefully gain parking spaces. But we don't have a specific design on how many might be lost or how many might be gained.
Well, you're already net up because you knocked down 3 properties and now have a lot instead of houses there or houses
Well,
in
the
business.
state-
So you're
yes,
net-
this- that
you're
we have
net- You're net up parking
We have a
spaces.
temporary right of way on the Fork Point and also on the other side by the Spinnaker property, but those are owned by the state, and those are
Mhm.
temporary right of ways for now. And we are talking with the state to make sure that we retain the parking.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I think we'll take you and then I guess then Dave, we can bring it back to you and we can.
I just had a couple points that I had wanted to make, just about the pedestrian experience and trying to get the maximum with the sidewalk, which is some of the things that we heard from when we did public outreach. We did put the project on hold for almost a year because the state wasn't sure what its project limits were. And because we're paying for the design of 100% of the design of the road reconstruction, we didn't want to be chasing our tail after the state changing its mind several times. So that's why that you haven't seen a lot of activity with the East Norwalk Design Advisory Committee, because we haven't met and we had put the designer, Art DeCesar Associates, on hold because we wanted to make sure that we were spending the funds that we had in the most prudent way possible. So now that the projects, we've committed to the state to get the project back on track, and there is a 90% design due from everybody from third taxing by April, I think, of this year for the project. But for us, for the city, we're still only at 30% design because we had put our project on hold, so we have a lot of work to do. And just again for the pedestrians, the teed up intersection has a lot of advantages for making sure that there's safe pedestrian crossing. Right now, it's askew, as you know, with the sign that gets knocked down, and even if the light is in the new position, this provides a much safer pedestrian crossing to the train station. The sidewalk without having the utility poles in them make it more pedestrian friendly. And also, we were having a lot of trouble relocating the bus shelter that's there now, with the driveway being so, it's not a good spot now. It certainly blocks traffic if the bus stops, you can't go anywhere. And so this, if this can be achieved, we would have more opportunity to appropriately place the bus shelter in a safer spot. So that was just a couple of points I wanted to make as far as.
I just want to clarify because the point about the grade. My understanding from the last set of plans I saw was that this would have been lowered because you were talking about having to do compensatory grading all the way back here and all the way back here to account for the lowering of the roadway. Is that no longer the case?
I don't recall ever there being road lowering here.
Well, that was
And
because
there
they
was
chopped off a third of the project.
So, no, the project still goes to Myrtle.
Okay. Got that? Okay.
So there is a little grading that happens in here, but it doesn't. It may go to this driveway. Just because your building is being long, and there's some massaging that needs to be done on that corner.
So I'm sure everyone had the opportunity to see your presentation and questions were answered. And I'm gonna give it back to you, Dave.
No?
I mean, Kevin, I'm sorry.
Actually,
Kevin,
He looks like Dave Brown.
George Dave.
He looks like Dave Brown.
Yeah, but I just don't need to finish, so we started it out, okay. So, we're gonna move forward then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
very
you.
much, everyone.